Before sunrise in the autumn of 1450, a grain merchant from the Black Sea stands at the bow of his vessel as it drifts south through the Bosporus. The air is cold enough to sting his face. Around him, sailors move quietly between coils of rope and stacked cargo, speaking in low voices while the eastern horizon begins to brighten. He has made this journey many times during his life. He knows where the currents become treacherous. He knows which harbors offer fair prices and which officials demand larger fees. He knows the smell of wet timber, tar, salt, and fish that clings to the shipping lanes connecting Europe and Asia, yet every voyage ends the same way. The first sight of Constantinople still leaves him staring. As dawn spreads across the water, the city slowly emerges from the darkness. Towers appear first, rising above the shoreline like distant watchfires, turned to stone. Then come the walls, stretching across the landscape with a scale that seems almost impossible to comprehend. Behind them rises a crowded horizon of domes, churches, palaces, monasteries, and houses layered upon hills that descend toward the sea. Finally, the great dome of Hagia Sophia catches the first sunlight and glows above the city as though suspended between earth and heaven. For travelers arriving by sea, Constantinople does not feel like a city that was built. It feels like a city that was inherited. If you enjoy learning about history, subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and share it with your friends. In the comments, let me know where you're listening from. I would love to hear from you. More than 11 centuries have passed since Emperor Constantine established his capital here in 330 AD. Since then, generations of rulers, merchants, priests, soldiers, craftsmen, and laborers have transformed a strategic settlement into one of the most celebrated cities on earth. Long after the western half of the Roman Empire disappeared, Constantinople endured. It survived invasions, sieges, plagues, religious conflicts, dynastic struggles, and political upheavals that destroyed countless rivals. From the deck of a ship entering the Bosporus, it still appears eternal. That appearance is deceiving. In 1450, Constantinople remains one of the most famous cities in Christendom, but fame can conceal weakness just as easily as it reflects strength. The empire that once ruled vast territories now occupies only fragments of its former domain. Provinces that supplied armies, taxes, and agricultural wealth have slipped away over generations. Trade continues to flow through the city, yet much of the surrounding world no longer answers to the emperor who rules within its walls. The city still looks like the center of an empire. The empire itself is quietly disappearing. As the merchant's vessel approaches the Golden Horn, activity begins to unfold along the waterfront. Dockworkers gather beside warehouses before sunrise. Fishing boats return from the night sea. Bakers prepare the day's first loaves, while smoke rises from chimneys overlooking the harbor. Church bells ring across the water, mingling with the cries of gulls circling above anchored ships. Few harbors in the medieval world can rival this one. The Golden Horn curves deep into the city like a sheltered arm of the sea, providing one of the safest natural anchorages in the Mediterranean. For centuries, it has served as the commercial heart of Constantinople. Grain from the Black Sea arrives here. Silk and spices from Asia pass through its markets. Wine, timber, metals, textiles, and luxury goods move between continents through its crowded docks. Yet even here, signs of change are impossible to ignore. Stretching us across the mouth of the harbor is one of the city's most famous defenses, a massive iron chain capable of blocking hostile fleets from entering the Golden Horn. For generations, foreign visitors have admired it. Children grow up hearing stories of enemy ships stopped by its strength. To many citizens, the chain feels like a permanent feature of the world itself, another symbol of Constantinople's reputation for survival. The merchant studies it briefly as his ship passes nearby. Like many people in the city, he takes comfort in its presence. He has no reason to believe that entire ages can vanish. Across the water rises Galata, the Genoese district whose tall tower overlooks the harbor. Its merchants maintain commercial networks stretching from the Black Sea to the western Mediterranean. Their ships crowd the docks. Their warehouses store goods worth fortunes. Their presence enriches Constantinople, but it also reflects a changing balance of power. Foreign communities have become increasingly important to the city's economy, and their growing influence serves as a reminder that wealth and authority no longer rest entirely in Byzantine hands. Once ashore, the merchant joins the morning crowds moving through the city. The streets are already filling with life. Water sellers weave through pedestrians carrying wooden containers across their shoulders. Artisans open workshops inherited from fathers and grandfathers. Monks move toward churches for prayer, while traders arrange imported goods beneath. Awnings lining busy market streets. Greek, Italian, Armenian, and Slavic voices mingle together in conversations shaped by commerce, politics, and religion. At first glance, Constantinople appears prosperous. At second glance, it appears haunted. A short walk can carry a traveler from crowded markets into districts that feel strangely empty. Historians estimate that perhaps 50,000 people now live within walls originally designed to protect several 100,000. Entire neighborhoods contain abandoned structures. Gardens grow where houses once stood. Fruit trees rise between ruined walls. In some districts, shepherds graze goats among the remains of buildings, constructed during centuries of greater wealth and population. The merchant passes one such area on his way toward a warehouse. Broken columns emerge from tall grass. Crumbling stone foundations disappear beneath vines. Birds nest inside structures that once belonged to wealthy families whose names have long been forgotten. The city seems caught between two realities. One speaks of greatness, the other speaks of decline. Nowhere is that contrast more striking than inside Hagia Sophia. Later that afternoon, the merchant joins a stream of worshippers entering the immense church. Sunlight filters through high windows beneath the vast dome. Golden mosaics shimmer in the half-light. Candles flicker before icons blackened by centuries of smoke and prayer. The scale of the building remains overwhelming even for those who have visited many times before. Here, emperors have been crowned. Victories have been celebrated. Disasters have been mourned. For many citizens, Hagia Sophia is more than a church. It is proof that Constantinople occupies a special place in sacred history. The empire may have shrunk. Enemies may gather beyond the frontiers. The treasury may struggle under mounting pressures. Yet beneath this dome, surrounded by symbols of centuries of faith and survival, those anxieties can briefly feel distant. Outside the church, however, the world continues to change. Along the landward horizon, beyond the famous Theodosian Walls, new powers are reshaping the balance of the eastern Mediterranean. Roads, fortresses, and territories that once belonged to Byzantium now answer to others. Rumors arriving from distant frontiers grow darker with each passing year. Most citizens do not yet realize how little time remains. But from the towers guarding the city, watchmen can already see the outlines of a future moving steadily toward Constantinople. And for the first time in centuries, the city that had spent generations watching history pass through its gates was about to discover what it felt like when history began advancing. Directly toward it, the following morning, the grain merchant finds himself in a tavern overlooking the harbor. The room is crowded with sailors, traders, laborers, and travelers seeking warmth before beginning the day's work. Conversations overlap in several languages. Some men discuss cargo prices. Others argue about politics. A few simply sit in silence, listening. Near the far wall, a sailor recently arrived from the Black Sea lowers his voice and begins telling a story. He speaks of new Ottoman fortifications rising along strategic waterways. He describes military preparations taking place far beyond Constantinople's walls. He claims that engineers and craftsmen are being gathered in unusual numbers. The details are uncertain, as such stories often are, but the effect is immediate. Several men stop eating. Others lean closer. No one knows whether every part of the story is true. Everyone listens anyway. Rumors have become part of daily life in Constantinople. They arrive aboard merchant vessels. They travel with diplomats and pilgrims. They pass through marketplaces and monasteries, changing slightly with every retelling. Some prove false. Others prove dangerously accurate. Together, they create an atmosphere that is difficult to describe but impossible to ignore. The city continues functioning as it always has. Yet beneath the routines of ordinary life runs a current of unease. The merchant notices it everywhere. He hears it in conversations between traders, worried about future disruptions to commerce. He sees it in the expressions of citizens, studying reports from distant territories. He senses it in the cautious way people discuss the expanding power of the Ottoman state. Fear has not taken hold of the city. Awareness has. For generations, Constantinople survived because powerful rivals were divided against one another. Civil wars, competing kingdoms, shifting alliances, and regional conflicts repeatedly bought the empire time. Again and again, crises that appeared fatal were postponed or avoided. By 1450, however, many citizens are beginning to understand that circumstances are changing. The Ottoman Empire is no longer a rising power. It is the dominant power. What began as frontier principality generations earlier has expanded into a vast and disciplined state stretching across parts of Europe and Asia. Its armies command enormous resources. Its rulers possess growing confidence. Its territory now surrounds much of what remains of the Byzantine world. From the upper levels of Constantinople's walls, the reality becomes impossible to ignore. Several days later, the merchant accompanies a friend delivering supplies near the landward defenses. The journey takes them toward the Theodosian Walls, perhaps the most famous fortifications in the medieval world. Even after centuries, their scale remains astonishing. Massive towers rise above layered defenses designed to absorb and repel attack. Deep defensive zones stretch across the western approach to the city. For nearly 1,000 years, these fortifications have frustrated invaders who seemed unstoppable. Persians failed here, Arabs failed here, Bulgarians failed here. Countless armies discovered that reaching Constantinople was easier than taking it. The walls have become more than military structures. They have become psychological ones. Many citizens trust them as completely as previous generations trusted mountains or rivers. Yet standing atop the ramparts, the merchant notices something unsettling. Beyond the walls lies a world that no longer belongs to Byzantium. The countryside that once formed part of a larger imperial system now exists under different rulers. Roads that once carried imperial authority now connect territories controlled by others. What was once the center of a vast political order increasingly resembles an island surrounded by someone else's future. The realization is difficult to dismiss. Inside the city, debates intensify. Perhaps nowhere are those divisions more visible than in the churches. For decades, Byzantine leaders have searched for meaningful assistance from Western Europe. Military support from Latin Christian powers could strengthen Constantinople's chances of survival. Diplomatic cooperation might alter the balance of power, yet every proposal carries painful complications. The memory of the Fourth Crusade still lingers like an old wound. In 1204, Crusaders who had originally set out for the Holy Land captured Constantinople instead. Churches were looted. Relics vanished. Palaces were stripped of treasures accumulated over centuries. The event shattered trust between Eastern and Western Christians in ways that never fully healed. Now, more than 2 centuries later, Citizens remain divided over how much cooperation should be pursued. Some argue that survival requires compromise. Others believe compromise threatens the very identity of the civilization they are trying to preserve. The merchant hears these arguments frequently. They fill taverns, marketplaces, and church courtyards. Neither side possesses an easy answer. Both understand what is at stake. Meanwhile, beyond the city, a young ruler studies Constantinople with increasing attention. Sultan Mehmed II is not yet 20 years old, but few who encounter him mistake him for an ordinary monarch. He is fascinated by history, military strategy, engineering, and imperial power. He studies maps, he consults scholars. He examines the achievements of rulers who came before him. Most importantly, he understands what Constantinople represents. To many rulers, the city would be a prize. To Mehmed, it is a destiny. As long as Constantinople survives, the legacy of the Roman Empire remains visible in the heart of the region. As long as its walls stand, another vision of authority continues to exist alongside his own. The city is no longer merely a target. It has become an objective around which larger ambitions are beginning to organize themselves. Inside Constantinople, life continues. Ships enter the harbor. Bells ring across the hills. Candles burn beneath the dome of Hagia Sophia. Children play in streets lined with monuments older than entire kingdoms elsewhere in Europe. Yet beneath the familiar rhythms of daily life, pressure continues accumulating. The walls still stand. The churches remain full. The markets remain active. But for the first time in centuries, there are growing signs that the foundation supporting the city may no longer be as secure as they appear. And beyond the horizon, forces already in motion are steadily approaching a point from which there will be no return. As winter approaches, the grain merchant climbs one of the hills overlooking the city shortly before sunset. From there, Constantinople unfolds beneath him in all its contradictions. The waters of the Bosporus glow beneath the fading light. The Golden Horn curves through the landscape like a river of bronze. Church domes catch the last rays of the sun. Smoke rises from thousands of hearths as families prepare evening meals. Along the harbor, sailors secure vessels that will depart with the morning tide. Across the water, the Tower of Galata stands watch over the growing shadows. The view is magnificent. It is also deceptive. A stranger seeing the city for the first time might assume he was looking upon the capital of a powerful empire. The walls remain imposing. The churches remain crowded. Trade continues flowing through the harbor. Imperial banners still fly above palaces and government buildings. Yet the reality beneath the skyline is more fragile. The Byzantine Empire that once shaped the destinies of nations has been reduced to a handful of territories clustered around its ancient capital. Its rulers still possess prestige, but prestige cannot replace manpower. Its institutions still function, but institutions alone cannot reverse centuries of decline. Its citizens remain proud of their inheritance, yet pride offers little protection against geopolitical realities. The merchant has spent months moving through the city. He has walked crowded market streets where traders bargain over goods from distant lands. He has passed abandoned neighborhoods where orchards now grow among the ruins of forgotten houses. He has prayed beneath the vast dome of Hagia Sophia and listened to sailors exchanging rumors in harbor taverns. Everywhere he has encountered the same tension. A city that remains deeply alive while simultaneously carrying the weight of its own history. That tension defines Constantinople in 1450. The city is neither flourishing nor collapsing. It is waiting for decisions that have not yet been made, waiting for events already gathering beyond its horizon, waiting for a future that grows harder to avoid with every passing season. Yet reducing Constantinople's story to its approaching fall would miss something essential. The city matters not simply because of how it ended, but because of what it preserved. Within its monasteries, Scribes continue copying manuscripts by hand. Ancient texts survive because generations considered them worth protecting. Within churches and schools, scholars preserve traditions reaching back through centuries of theological debate, philosophical inquiry, and historical memory. Roman law, Greek learning, Christian theology, architecture, literature, and art all endure within the city's walls. In many respects, Constantinople has become a living archive. Long after political power faded, cultural influence remained. That achievement is easy to overlook because history often favors stories of conquest. Victorious armies, expanding empires, and dramatic battles naturally attract attention. Preservation is quieter. It lacks the spectacle of military triumph. Yet preservation can shape the future just as profoundly as conquest. The merchant cannot see this larger historical picture. He is concerned with practical matters: cargo prices, family obligations, weather conditions, and the next trading season. Like most people, he experiences history not as a grand narrative, but as a series of immediate concerns. That fact makes his world familiar. Modern people often imagine historical societies as fundamentally different from their own. Yet the citizens of Constantinople worried about uncertainty, political instability, economic pressures, and the future of institutions they inherited from previous generations. They debated how much change should be accepted and how much should be resisted. They argued about alliances, leadership, and survival. The details differ. The human experience does not. As darkness settles across the city, lamps begin appearing in windows overlooking the harbor. The merchant watches the lights spread through neighborhoods that have endured for centuries. Somewhere below, monks prepare for evening prayers. Families gather around tables. Guards take their positions along the walls. Ships rock gently at anchor beneath the night sky. For a brief moment, Constantinople feels timeless. History, however, rarely pauses. Within 3 years, Sultan Mehmed II will lead the siege that changes the city's destiny. Emperor Constantine XI will die defending the capital of an empire whose roots stretch back to ancient Rome. The Byzantine Empire will disappear from the political map after more than a millennium of existence. But the city itself will not vanish. That is perhaps the most remarkable part of its story. Constantinople will become the capital of a new empire. Its strategic position will remain as valuable as ever. New rulers will occupy its palaces. New communities will settle within its neighborhoods. New traditions will emerge alongside older ones. The city will continue evolving while carrying traces of every civilization that shaped it. Today, the world knows this place as Istanbul. Millions cross the Bosporus each year, ferries travel routes once navigated by Byzantine sailors. Markets continue operating near districts where merchants traded centuries ago. Above all, the great dome of Hagia Sophia still dominates the skyline, connecting the modern city to the world our merchant once knew. Empires rose and fell around Constantinople, the city endured, and perhaps that is the lesson hidden within its final years. Power may fade, borders may shift, political systems may disappear, yet human achievements often outlive the structures that created them, carrying fragments of one age into the next. The city that once ruled the world eventually lost its empire. It never lost its place in history. I am watching the past so we can understand the present, and together we keep history alive.